Hello, Body Freedom Podcast. Super excited to be here with you today. It is a beautiful, epic spring day. The sun is out. It's been rainy and thundery, very spring like weather here where I live, and the sun's come out. It's just going to be this wonderful, epic day. It gets like triple digit horrific pain and suffering around July and August where I live. So this is just, you take it in and you just love it. So I actually am recording this episode with my door completely wide open so I can see outside, and that's wonderful, but also makes me a little nervous, wondering what crazy noises are about to come out of this. But hopefully, my neighborhood's usually pretty quiet. So I was just really wanting to bring in that kind of spring energy for this particular episode. I want to talk about what the hell do we do with all these feels. So, if you go back just one episode, if you missed it, you can go back and check it out. We talked about three strategies that you can start using, and we use these with our clients in Hello Body Freedom to stop using food so that you have a level of like boundary, or I like to think of it as a gift or an opportunity to not use food to cope. Right. So, if this is at the absolute like core of what we do with Hello Body Freedom. We are working with why we struggle with our relationship with food, why we have these ways that we use food, whether it's mindless and not so deep, maybe I'm just eating because I'm bored, or really strong urges, cravings, and compulsions to need food when we have this inner experience that is super dysregulated, right? So there's an entire spectrum that we can live on when it comes to using food for a bazillion other reasons besides physical hunger. And so last week was all about showing you ways that we help our clients start to be able to, number one, put food in its rightful place, right? Because we need to eat. And ideally, we want to eat nourishing meals. We want to feel good when we eat. We don't want to feel guilty after eating. We don't want to feel shame after eating. So there's certain not our parameters aren't the right word, but and we work individually with all of our clients because one thing that works for one client doesn't work for the other client. But you can go back and I hand you 3 of our top strategies that we use with our clients so that they can have the opportunity to not use food to cope. And whenever you start to really commit to this process, what will happen is that now the gift and the opportunity to feel whatever it is that you're feeling on the inside now has the opportunity to actually come up and like happen, and the reason why we wouldn't be able to feel what we're feeling is because if we just have that automatic and unconscious pattern of just eating without even thinking about how we're feeling, right? So we stop using food as the coping strategy, and now we're feeling all the feels. I want to give you a couple of examples here. One client I worked with a long time ago, not a long, maybe 3 years ago, I'll never forget when she finally started implementing what we taught. So you can go back to episode 36, it's one above this one. She starts implementing these and she starts realizing that every time she gets in a car, she is just spontaneously crying. There's no reason. She's like, why am I just spontaneously crying? And just for you and I to know, in case you're not sure, crying is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. Crying is a very cathartic experience. It's a very powerful human experience as a way to release whatever emotion. So people cry when they're happy, people cry when they're sad, people cry for there's a lot of emotions that can evoke crying, but it's definitely something you feel inside and then the crying can happen, right? Not to say I know I have people in my life and clients in my life that have no cry, and that usually is a major, major, major block right there. So, what ended up happening with this particular client I'm talking about, where every time she would start driving, she would start crying spontaneously. And that's because she always had snacks or other types of food with her in the car, and she always ate when she drove or when she was in a car. And so now all we did was put a parameter around not eating in the car. For me, that feels like a very basic parameter, a really cool way to and not the hardest way to really set a loving boundary. And it really worked. All of a sudden, she's crying. And so, what I want to do today is talk a little bit about what we can do with all of these feels. Okay. So now what we have is instead of using something to numb ourselves out from what we're feeling, now what we have is a nervous system that is really just experiencing whatever that inner experience is, whether you name it anxiety or stress or grief or sadness or even just buzzing or aliveness. There's so many different experiences we can have. But if we're always stuffing them down with food or with booze, we have a lot of clients that work with both alcohol and food inside of Hello Body Freedom. It can just be a lot, okay, whenever you start this process. So, what I'd like to do is I'd like to give you 3 different maybe steps. I think that these are steps for sure. And the first one is definitely the first step, and then the other 2 kinda blend together. And these are like actual tactical things that you can start to do when you start feeling a lot of feels. All right, let's do this. Number 1, the very first thing when you are recognizing either your stress is going up or the emotions are getting heightened or you're starting to feel a little disoriented or noticing just things in the body that start to feel really uncomfortable. A lot of times at the very beginning of this process, number 1, it doesn't feel good. Just I'm gonna be straight up honest with you. And the reason it doesn't feel good is because we've been taught that whatever we're feeling in our body, I'm not gonna get into the depths and the science of this. I teach this inside of my Path to Food and Body Freedom Challenge. I go into major depth. So if you wanna go to hellobodyfreedom.com/challenge. So that's hellobodyfreedom.com/challenge. And you will find that you can go into my Food and Body Freedom Challenge. So we go into major science inside of that challenge. You start to really understand what is this all about. But for now, just knowing that at times in the past, whether it was last week, 2 years ago, or when you were a little kid, we learned that feeling certain feelings were just not okay. And so over time, we've learned to shove and push those feelings down. So feelings, sensations, emotions, use pick your words, whatever, it's the same thing. For the way that we're talking about it here. And then we also learned, especially if you're here, we learned to just shove food or booze on top of it so that way we really change our state in a way and then we don't get the opportunity to feel what we're feeling. So because of that kind of pyramid, right? One is the learned experience that it's just not okay to feel this feeling, whether we got it from our caretakers, whether we got it from culture in general, whatever, wherever we might have picked it up from, whether we got it from just like unresolved trauma. There's so many ways that we pick up not allowing ourselves to feel what we're feeling. And then we really shut it down inside of us. Okay. So here we are feeling more. And that's why it feels so intense. You actually have so many unconscious parts of you that believe that feeling what you're feeling is dangerous. Feeling what you're feeling is unacceptable, right? Think about just basics like pull yourself up from the bootstraps, suck it up, buttercup. These are just cultural ways that we learn can't feel feelings, right? Having a rough day, just shove it down and get through it, right? There's just so many ways that we just make what we're experiencing feeling not valid. And so then when we start to feel, it can be a lot. So this very first lesson right here is really a lesson in acceptance. So a big inhale and a big exhale. What you are feeling is allowed. It makes sense. It's normal. Even though it doesn't feel normal, even though it feels painful or hard or scary or annoying or frustrating or whatever the thing is that you're feeling right now around wanting to not feel what you're feeling, the very, very first step in this whole process is to practice simply being with whatever your experience is. Again, in this whole learning process since we were kids. We've learned certain things are okay to feel, certain things are not okay to feel. And because of that, we unconsciously or consciously take whatever the icky feeling is that we don't want to feel, we push it away, we shove it under a rug, we shove it in the closet, we keep it in the dark, we make it wrong, we make ourselves wrong for feeling what we're feeling. So the very, very first step is making yourself right. It makes sense that I feel this, right? The difference of trying to escape what you're feeling versus fully and completely, which the fully and completely part, like on a scale of 1 to 10, if you were going to say like you were feeling and fully in acceptance at a 10, it doesn't happen that fast. It's actually like a titrated way. So you might be able to feel it or experience it and even accept it, but it's not all the way. Maybe it feels like a 2 and then eventually a 4, right? And then eventually you can get better. Or maybe with the feelings, emotions, and sensations that you might experience in the body, maybe we can use anger and frustration as one example. If you're feeling frustration or annoyance or anger, if you're feeling that on a scale of 1 to 10, if you're feeling it at like 2 versus a 10, where you're just raging pissed or raging frustrated, where you just can't even think straight, right? It might be hard to fully accept it as a 10. It might be a lot easier to fully accept it if you're only feeling it at like a 2 or a 3. And this is the process of feeling our feelings, by the way. Whether you're feeling at a 2 or a 10, which again, over time you get better and better and better at feeling, but the ultimate number one first step is that sense of it is right that I'm feeling this. I am right to be feeling this. It makes sense that I feel this, really making yourself so right because it is right. You are a human and humans have emotions, and it is a very human thing to be with and to feel and to have that experience, right? So you are really coming into right relationship when you can first know that what you're feeling is normal and come into that sense of acceptance, right? We start this on day 1 inside of Hello Body Freedom, right? So you get better and better. You can go deeper and deeper with this particular you'll notice like new level, new devil. You'll get really good and then all of a sudden you'll hit like a full-on roadblock and it's usually these deeper, more childhood trauma, unresolved trauma type feelings and emotions. Those tend to be the ones where we like come up against roadblocks and this is where coaching obviously comes into place. This is where practicing what we teach in Hello Body Freedom as a way to really get to the other side. So, number 1, making it right and accepting. Okay, that's the first thing that you're going to do with whatever you're feeling. Now that you're really practicing not using food as the coping strategy on the regular. All right. Number 2 and number 3 are very connected, but they are ways in which to actually process it. So, I just want to go back to number 1. When you really let yourself truly feel like it makes sense that I feel this. I am right for feeling this. I'm allowed to feel this. When you get really good at that, that in and of itself has a powerful inner processing experience that happens that can very easily morph and shift and change whatever that intensity that's in the body. It could change it, it could shift it. It's pretty powerful. Okay. Now, notice I keep talking about the inner experience in the body. I think we need to have a side note here. I'm trying to very hard to keep my train of thought here, but this side note feels really important because the inner experience itself, I'm talking about embodiment, right? So what often happens is we spin up in our heads whenever we're feeling a feeling, I'm having a bad day, and then we spin the story in our head. The story, the story, the story, the story, just talk up in your head, just making it worse and worse and worse. Looping negative thoughts to loop negative, icky feelings in the body. So what I am talking about is truly being able to let go of the thoughts as best as you can, which is also a skill set in and of itself that we start on day 1 inside of Hello Body Freedom. And like your journey in Hello Body Freedom is a year long, and that's on purpose because we're talking about such nuanced pieces that most people don't have any practice in. I know I didn't forever. The amount of stories I just looped in my head for like decades of my life. Oh my God, that just keep you stuck. So that should probably be the first part, letting go of whatever the story is that you're making about it, and then being able to actually feel what you're feeling in your body. Being able to go, oh, this feels like tension. This feels like constriction. This feels like grief. This feels like anxiety, whatever that thing is that you might be feeling. And then we make that right. So that's what I'm talking about. So the number 2 and number 3, what I'm talking about is these are both ways that you can process the thing that you're feeling, the emotion, sensation, like intensity, whatever that nervous system dysregulation is, okay? So, number 2, the focus is processing this via outer experiences, meaning outside of an inner experience. So number 3 is processing them with like inner practices. So number 2 is outer practices. So these can tend to be a lot more accessible, especially if you're not inside Hello Body Freedom as a client, especially if you're not working closely with a coach or your coaching team to really help you get deeper into the inner experience. But we're going to go over both today because there's a lot of good stuff here. Number 2, so that's outer practices that you can do. So here you are, you're driving in the car, you're feeling all the feels. I'm thinking about my client that this from a long time ago who worked through and processed so much beautiful, epic stuff. So, what can you do? Here you are. You probably and you might even have an urge to eat. So here you are deciding, I'm not going to eat. I'm going to feel all my feels, even though there might be the urge to go get the food. And why would that urge be here? To me, that makes sense too. Of course, you have an urge to eat because that's been the answer for so long. I'm going to use the food to make myself feel better, which is very different than knowing that the food is just a coping strategy. So if I don't use the food, then I can actually use real, or I don't want to say real, but other strategies that actually will do way better at working with and processing and, like, essentially moving that shit through you. Okay? All right. So these are outer practices. So number 1 is a distraction. Like, in that moment, I would have told my client, as she's brand new at doing this, I would have put on some happy music, put something on that makes you laugh a little bit so you can really start to see you could change your state. So think about that. Like when you put on like a good song, doesn't it usually lift your vibe a little? So think about like high vibe music. That's a great thing. And again, all of these kind of can be distraction. So I'll have clients going through a real hard time at work. They're just going through a real stressful moment. They don't know, they can feel that urge to eat. They don't want to eat. What do I do? What do I do? They will go for a walk around the building. They will just get up from their desk and go to the bathroom. So there's different ways in which some of my clients just have these like epic ways of just changing. Sometimes it's just get back to work. I know now we all work from home. I know that's a big one for me. If I'm finding myself not hungry and I'm like going to the cupboard, I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm totally avoiding all the work I need to do. But if I stay here, this urge to eat. So, one distraction that I could have is just get back to work, right? There's so many ways that you can distract yourself. You get to play with that and play with what works best for you. So, go do something else. Call a friend. That's a good one. Call your coach, call your therapist, listen to high vibe music, go listen to a podcast, play a game. I have coloring books. I have clients that use coloring books like with the colored pencils or crayons, whatever. At the end of the night, it starts to like down regulate the nervous system a little bit, makes them feel better. And so, in a sense, it's a distraction. And also, playing a game, playing a board game, watching TV. Sometimes watching TV can turn into binge watching, which can be like a dissociative quality, but sometimes, like, just so much thinking about healing. We just really need a distraction, right? So TV can be great sometimes too, as well. So these are some examples. Getting just outside in nature, which isn't so much of a distraction, but it can be just getting some sunlight on your face, getting some sun in your eyes, feeling the breeze, listening to the birds. All of these things are actually great ways of regulating your nervous system, but can also distract you from an urge. And the truth of the matter is whatever that inner experience you're feeling, this kind of intensity in the body as your nervous system is maybe getting activated, or that you can definitely tell your emotions are high, all of these pieces. These are real practical strategies. And when you start to even distract a little bit, what you're really doing is you're pausing. Instead of immediately reaching for food or booze or whatever the thing is to make yourself feel better, you're using these other distractions. And the longer you have that pause, what research shows us is that the emotion sensation combo in the body morphs, shifts, changes, or completely disappears inside of 30 seconds to 3 minutes. And so that could be all that's needed in order to move it through your body. Okay. So those tend to be the easier ones to grab a hold of, especially when you're brand new at all this. Then we have ways of working with the body. That's why I call them inner practices. So number one, I want to honor that like going for a walk I think counts as partially like an inner experience because it's an actual embodied experience. You can talk about walking all day long, but you don't actually get the benefit of going for a walk unless you actually get your ass off your seat and like go for a walk. And now you have the embodied experience of walking. And that's what I'm talking about here in number 3, which is the embodied experience. So anything that you can think of, and even if it feels like a distraction, sometimes it's going for a walk and calling your mom or your BFF or your therapist or your coach. And it can have a number 2 kind of distraction feel to it, but it is embodied for sure. Journaling, if you're putting pen to paper, that is an embodied practice. Any kind of think about walking, swimming, running, bike riding, any kind of exercise at all, again, is an embodied practice. Anything that you're going to do with the body is going to change the physiological state. It's going to change your energy. And all of this affects what's going on with your nervous system. And 8 times out of 10, I don't know how strong or true that science is, but your nervous system is going to shift. You are going to feel more downregulated. Or if you're feeling really dissociated, where you're feeling like intense low levels with the nervous system, where you're feeling like you want to just go into hiding, you can't get out of bed, that kind of real low space, moving your body will help pop you up a little bit, right? So moving your body, if you're super high on the sympathetic nervous system, it can bring you back down to regulation, or if you're super low, it can help bring you up to regulation. So very, very powerful. Anything body based, that's easy. Another thing that just popped into my mind is like petting your pet. Usually my dog is like in my lap, so I can feel that. Like my hand to his fur, or like my cat's is embodied. Like, I can talk about petting my pet all day long, but the actual experience of I'm down regulating my pet is down regulating me, everything is great, is another great practice, right? So, now, body-based, we've gone over those. Practice being with what you are feeling. So this part is a little bit more. So there's just a little bonus one here. I know we talked about the 3. So number 1, which is allowing yourself to feel what you're feeling, right? And we actually had a bonus like the pre-bonus of all of this is getting out of your story, getting out of your head and into the actual feeling, sensation, experience. So really bringing your consciousness and awareness down, down, down. And then the number 1 when we talked about is letting what you're feeling and experiencing be right. It makes sense that you feel this way, right? Our nervous systems are designed to keep us safe and alive. They're designed to protect us, and it is absolutely a beautiful, magical thing. It is beautiful, it is magical how lucky we are to have nervous systems that just take this level of care of us, right? So the feelings that you feel are connected to that. Let those be right. Stop shoving them under the rug, shoving them in the closet, and allowing yourself to feel what you're feeling. Number 2, anything that is like a distraction type practice, right? That you can do to stave off whatever the intensity you're feeling, giving it some time to morph, shift, and change, or maybe go away altogether. And then number 3, working with the body-based type things we talked about, exercise, petting your pet, going for a walk, all of those things. And then this bonus one is really powerful because it could be anything from above from number 2 or number 3, but it's actually asking yourself, "What do I actually need right now?" So here I am choosing not to use food as the thing right now. I'm not reaching for that for the fix. Right, I'm realizing I don't need that in this moment. I'm not physically hungry, or it's in between meals, or whatever loving boundary you put for yourself around food. And notice I'm not talking about types of food. I wanna be very clear. We're not talking about types. I'm talking about either you're eating food or you're not eating food, okay? So this isn't about eating broccoli over donuts, not the situation. Okay, so here you are, and you're asking yourself in this moment where you will likely have an urge to eat because you are feeling so much feelings, what do I actually need right now? In this moment, food isn't the answer. What is the answer? And this could be powerful because what could come up for you, things that have come up for me is, man, I just need a nap, or I just need a hug, or I just need a bath, or I just need to like curl in a ball, or I just need to go take a 5-minute break and breathe outside and feel the sun on my face, or I just need to go for a walk, or I need to pet my pet. The answers could just start to pop up for you. And I think that that's very powerful because this whole process isn't about you having to rely on other humans to help you know what to do. Like, you have this epic inner genius inside of you that over time you just, I would say, gave. I don't want to say you specifically, but I think we can have the tendency to give our power up for especially diet culture. If we're in that world, we just like, oh, I must not know anything. I'll just follow this exact diet they must know, right? No, there's body wisdom inside of you. There's innate genius inside of you of how to self care. And so the more that you keep tapping into that, and then being able to give yourself what you need, even if it's just a couple of big inhales and exhales. Just need a deep inhale and a big sigh on the other end. Okay. That is a powerful one right there. So asking yourself what you need and knowing that you have those answers. And if it takes time, which it does, it takes time to trust ourselves, takes time to trust that we know what to give ourselves and how to give ourselves what we need. And the more that we do this work, the more options we have on the table, so to speak, the less you will use food as that coping strategy. Why? Because food doesn't actually work. Whenever you are having like big nervous system dysregulation, unless you're physically hungry, unless you literally haven't eaten, which can be a big trigger for nervous system dysregulation, like not eating all day long. And then you wonder why you're like pissed off at the world and angry and shaking, and your nervous system feels like you're fried. Yeah, because you didn't eat. In that moment, yes, eating is the right answer. Okay. But for most of us, what we have is we have stress eating, bored eating, mindless eating, anxious eating, overeating, emotional eating, binge eating of all different colors and shades, and it's just not the answer. So I love giving the example of it's like I have an itch on my back. There's like something I just want to scratch it. I just want to scratch it. The right answer is how do I figure out how to scratch this itch on my back? But what's happening, just to use using food or booze in this situation, is you have an itch and instead of going, "What do I really need right now? I need a back scratcher, and I need to really get to it, and then I'm gonna feel totally satisfied." Instead of asking the question and instead of getting to the heart of it, what we do is we go, "Oh, fuck it, man. I'm just gonna eat the donuts, or I'm gonna eat the food in front of me, or I'm gonna eat whatever the thing might be." It's just anything to distract. "Oh, well, how can I'm not sure how to get rid of this. I'm gonna eat." But the truth is food never ever works in those situations. It doesn't. Food works really well for physical hunger. It does not work all that well for all of these other things. And when you finally learn to give yourself what you need, it's very powerful. There is an infinite amount of food that you can eat when you are trying to solve a problem with food that has nothing to do with food fixing that problem, right? You can eat so much food if you just, how do I scratch? How do I scratch this? How do I scratch this? How do I scratch this? But if we just pause and feel what is going on, it's, oh, there's this awful itch on my back. How do I get it? All right, let me get a back scratcher. And then you feel satisfied, right? When you're eating for physical hunger, when you're solving physical hunger, there is an there is a finite amount of food that you can eat, right? Physical hunger, this is the finite amount of food that solves physical hunger. And then there's satisfaction on the other side of it because you just solved physical hunger. Very, very powerful. Okay. The last thing I'm going to say for this episode is that we have not gone over a lot of the different things that we use inside of coaching, these really powerful bottom up practices. So, for instance, calling your friend is a top down practice for sure. Playing a game, distracting yourself, listening to high vibe music, all of these things can be really powerful, but they're coming from, okay, what else can I do? I'm thinking about a thing. Okay, maybe this will solve going down. So, like a top down type of even changing your mindset, like going, okay, it makes sense. This is allowed. I'm allowed to feel this way. This is very like high level thinking. You have to, like, in the moment, be able to think about the thing, right? It's a top down approach. You're using your consciousness, your prefrontal cortex, right? Which we do inside of Hello Body Freedom. A lot of the work, though, that we do inside of Hello Body Freedom are bottom up practices. These start with like unconscious. So when we think primal brain, we want to think the part of the brain that's connected to the body. So body based practices and emotional based practices. So lower than prefrontal cortex practices in order to really heal and regulate a nervous system. Because the truth of the matter is when you have that major urge to eat and that major like wanting to grab for food is the answer, in that moment, you're not your best self. You're not the part of you that's in charge in that moment is the part that feels like something is wrong, something is off, this feeling is not okay. We've got to fix it. It is the part of your brain, your primal brain that's just trying to keep you safe and alive, right? And it's doing what it knows how to do, which if I just eat the food, I learned this habit. When I feel this feeling, I eat the food and I know it works. So I'm just going to keep that habit loop going, right? And so Whenever you are in your higher self place, when you know that I want to eat healthy and I want to move my body and I want to create these healthy habits and I want a sustainable weight loss journey, all of those thoughts are like very like higher self, true self, right? Prefrontal cortex thoughts. But when you've had a really bad day, a really stressful day, a big emotional day, a lot of times we have to learn how to use these bottom up practices in order to have more of an integration in with this conscious part of our brain and then our more subconscious, unconscious parts of our brains. And when we can do this, it can actually have a more integrative approach and makes it a whole lot easier to not use food when you are not hungry. For instance, we use breathwork practices inside of Hello Body Freedom. We use emotional freedom technique. We use hypnotherapy. We use self love meditations. We work with inner child wounds. We work with the younger part of you wounds. We work with internal family system wounds. There's so many tools in our tool belt that are highly specialized in order to help you work with and touch these parts of you that are more subconscious and unconscious, working directly with the feeling sensation itself as a part of you and starting to pull apart that thread and process it in a really beautiful way, which is considered a bottom up practice. So, anyhow, all of that to say, if you want more information on any of that, you can go to hellobodyfreedom.com/challenge. Hellobodyfreedom.com/challenge. You can check out the Food and Body Freedom Challenge. It is epic. It is 5 entire days. I know 5 days is a lot, but the truth is that you've been handed a lot of BS when it comes to weight loss and health. And a lot of it is so wrapped up in toxic diet culture. And quite frankly, the untangling of this and understanding the real reasons why we are struggling with food and struggling with our relationship with food and our body. And we can start to untangle these deeper reasons and start healing at the body level and at the emotional level, it's pretty fucking powerful. This is what we do inside of Hello Body Freedom. So go check it out. I'm really excited to see you. I run the challenges at this phase. Not sure when you're listening to this podcast, but you'll be getting coached by me in the videos. You'll be getting coached by me in the DMs and all the juicy stuff. So it's a really great way to get some better information and an actual roadmap on the step by step that we have seen with our clients in Hello Body Freedom over the last decade of working at this level with clients, how true transformation happens from this bottom up place of working with embodiment, working with the body in order to truly untangle food and feelings and healing the deeper reasons why you would be using food as a coping mechanism in the first place. And whenever we start to clean up that behavior, a sustainable weight loss journey becomes so much easier and accessible. So, yay, that is all I have for you guys today. I hope this was helpful. I hope you see how it's connected to the episode we just had last week. And I hope you have an epic, amazing week. I realized that I have not been sharing about my quantum leap year. I can't believe it's already at the time, it's like the end of March. So I'm already a full quarter, 1 quarter of this year through. And so much has already come up. It's crazy. So that might be my next episode to share with you and how you could also have your quantum leap year this year. So very, very fun there. And that is all I got for you. I hope you guys have an epic, epic day, week. Reach out if you need anything, get the support that you need. And I cannot wait to see you next time. Bye, everybody.